Well, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you here again. We are with the Consulting Amigos, and we have today someone who's been involved with the MicroGiants, JP Beal, along with us, and he's been a kind of a regular or a semi-regular on on some of our podcasting, our videos, and we're glad to have him here today. JP has a background in an MBA in specialized large equipment and retail finance. Is that correct? And he's done a lot of that kind of financing, but he also is in business for himself and has been kind of working a unique niche. And so it'll be fun to have his comments about what we're going to go through today, which really has to do with corporate financing or company, or excuse me, competencies, not finance, competencies, and skill levels. Both of the owner and the team as a whole. So we're going to get into that, and then we'll chat a little bit. We've got John Mills and Ed Lasak here, as usual, to add critical comment about any concepts that we bring up. Competency for your own company. What kind of competency do you have? Meaning specialized skills and so forth. So we'll start running through that a little bit. And oh my. They changed the buttons on the bottom. Okay, so this is to remind everybody of kind of the diagram that of the sweet spot that we've talked about in the last two sessions, and one of them is customer types, of course, and then competition, and then the core competencies. And this really means your company's core competencies, compared to the marketplace, and also compared to the competition, because theoretically, you don't really want to repeat the competencies of your competition. You want to stand out and be different and develop innovation that is going to separate you and help create that market niche that we've been talking about. So that little diamond in the middle represents that sweet spot where you're sharing your competencies with your customers, but not the competitions. In other words, a moat. Um, so let's talk a little bit more specifically about these core competencies. What are they? What kind of a definition? And really, it's a group of skills that performs well consistently, that creates value for customers, or for competitive positioning and similar to customers, and then potentially with operations as well. So many times, some of your skills really has to do with how can you make something better, faster, cheaper, say especially in manufacturing. But that operational issue really counts as part of your competitive edge, and it is a competency that is created by many people that others can't quite copy, and then so therefore it fits. It's a key marketing positioning and emplacement tool. And it's really important because your customers, it becomes a strategy. It is maybe the foundational strategy. It determines what you should compete on, meaning how should you position your product as a differentiator so you can compete on that. It also shapes your pricing power, and it can help define your moat. So a couple of characteristics about this. It tends to be very repeatable. It's not a one-time thing. It's something you can do day in and day out. It's embedded in the organization. It's a process that continues and goes on, something that you don't have to, if you got several employees, something you don't have to constantly monitor. It's a process that your people, your team know how to carry out. That makes it a corporate competency, not just an individual skill. It creates value. It improves the customer experience. or lowers the cost, and it's defensible because it's very difficult for other people to do that. The there are four basic pieces to this, and just expanding a little bit on where we were in the last one, those operational competencies. It's can be supply chain manufacturing and cost control, as I mentioned, manufacturing efficiency, and then the customer facing competencies are really particularly important for this whole series of discussions, and that is it really helps with the branding and positioning. I hope that we can illustrate that here just in a minute for you. And then it also helps with customer service and as well as sales execution. Why? Because sales tend to look for differentiator. Your good salespeople will do that whether the company directs it or not. And they'll try to find these things. And these are the things that hopefully they will find. And hopefully good managers will direct them and point out where they have these strengths as well. It's strategic in the sense that it gives you a long-term advantage and it sets you up as an organization for developing, for being innovative. We've talked about innovation a lot here. And this is one of those things that can give you a structure for how to or where to innovate. If people are catching up to you in a particular, say, technical issue, you need to be moving on. And of course, that's what goes on in the high-tech industry all the time. One company is competing with another one. Intel right now, today, is building an entire multi-billion-dollar new, they call them foundries. It's a factory to build chips, a new kind of chip that will help them compete with NVIDIA versus the old-fashioned chip that John talked about in our last meeting, the ones that used to just be in the computer, like Intel Inside was the example. So that that ends up tying in with how are you going to build and grow and what competencies are you going to separate yourself from the competition. Um, and so if you kind of compare competency and skill with core competency, skill is an individual ability as opposed to a organizational capability and a strong process. But a core competency is a critical capability that really drives the competitive advantage, applies across multiple markets, and it's really hard to replicate. Other ways to do that, by the way, are through patents and secret formulas like Coca-Cola. So there are several ways to accomplish that. Thought I would. It gets a little academic, and so I thought I would throw out some fun examples here. So I've kind of done that, and then we're going to discuss some additional um, kinds of competencies that kind of fit this pattern. If you were to have a consulting firm, what is your competency? Well, it's turning data into actionable strategy. If the more complex, the better because it's harder for people to understand it. But then turning that into an actionable analysis and reporting is another piece of that which causes you to separate yourself from, say, business consulting as a whole animal. Then, if you add a proprietary methodology, one that other people don't know or understand, along with your branding, of course, to give you credibility, that's really important in consulting. Then you end up with something that can't be replicated. I tried to do that in my own consulting business. I learned that from the company that I spent a national firm 7 years prior to starting my own. And I learned that they were the only ones that had automated the process of what they called open to buy planning, which is primarily for retailers and especially fashion retailers. And they were able to do that through a proprietary process that simply was not known outside the company. No one could compete with it. So the sales um, challenge was not to differentiate from other companies. It was only to educate the new prospect that you had an answer that was in fact going to increase their productivity. So you didn't have to worry about competition. That didn't stay that way because they were very successful and didn't treat some of their people well, and they ended up breeding their own competition with their own people. But that's another story. Another example, which I've used a couple times before, this is a real example. It's an auto shop that happens to be in Southern California, and they focused only on Jaguars or Jaguar, and as John would probably pronounce it. And the focus was strictly on Jaguars, and they also liked to do restoration of old ones, XKEs, and any of the old collectibles as well. They, as it shows in this AI photograph or AI image, it was really a high-end kind of place, and they would pick you up, drop you off, and give you all of the kinds of services. And I'm talking 20, 30 years ago. So, I mean, they've been doing this long, and they picked up that if you're going to be doing luxury work on a specific automobile that needed frequent repairs because Jaguars have never been reliable cars. And, it was a good business model. And then many didn't like to work on them, but they loved it. They did it, and they ended up with almost all of the business in Southern California. I know that the president of the consulting firm that I just mentioned, he had two Jaguars, one to drive and one for the shop. And so he loved this place, and they were 60 miles away. So, that's why he had to have two Jaguars. But it became a status symbol to be using that. So here's another case of, well, how do you compete with something like that? Makes it tough. And then I went to AI and said, give me a product that nobody else could reproduce. Is there such a thing? From because I wanted a manufacturing example, and basically it came up with this product right here. It's called an Ultra widget, and basically it's the proprietary side of it is not so much the widget, but it's the machine that makes the widget. So an AI called this machine that makes this ultra widget quantum phase locked microforge. And so there you have a piece that's who in the world is going to make that? When you patent it, and you have a whole lot of proprietary technology inside. How in the world are you going to compete with that? And of course, that's pretty much describes um, NVIDIA today, doesn't it? So um, let's keep talking about some of these subjects and kind of open it up for you guys. The This is really the strategic issue that can really, really make a difference for a company. And I have known of several companies that have found their niche, and it can be from everyday blue collar kinds of jobs where you're able to really separate two very ultra technology jobs like NVIDIA is probably one of the great reasons. Um, so, Ed, you had mentioned that you had some examples to share. What you
Well,
got?
the one example I like to always talk about is, there's so many different CPA firms that are
Hmm.
out there.
Yeah.
And when you try to pick one over another, um, it's not all that easy because in reality, they all do. basically the same thing. And they may have specialization in one area or the other, but a lot of times they don't market it because they don't understand what they really truly have. They haven't been through the Ron Burgess marketing training. But so if you find an area like one CPA locally has done, and that's employee stock ownership plans, that opened the door for them to grow. They're a local firm, but they're nationally recognized because of this expertise. So they get business from throughout the whole country, uh, whereas most CPA firms are only local. So they kind of can do both. And they have a staff now trained of 60, 70 CPAs in this methodology and
Hmm.
expertise. And they have been growing by 20% a year. Whereas
Yeah.
other
Wow.
CPA firms are just basically stagnated and they don't know what to do, how to
And
grow their business.
yeah, and we hear about rapid growth in high tech, but for a consulting slash CPA firm or legal firm to grow 20% is absolutely outrageous.
It is.
Yeah, just amazing.
And basically, if you're going to be an ESOP, that's the firm you're going to recommend, and that's the
Mhm.
firm you're going to use because they can save you all kinds of money in taxes, and they can also increase your level of compliance with all the regulations that are out there. So,
Well, and it's a great marketing tool because you've got all these consultants in other areas, and if their clients say they're interested in an ESOP, they've only got one good, strong name to give them.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a local firm is competing with CPA firms that are like the top four in the nation.
Wow.
It's
That's
really it's a phenomenal story.
yeah, that
And
is
and
amazing.
in reality, the one thing they probably haven't been able to figure out is that they really could increase their margins significantly if they charge more.
Yeah.
Just like the big guys know how to charge.
Well, there's another indication, just a plain marketing indication, and that is if you're growing 20% per year, there's room to get a little more revenue out of that in terms of margin. Just when you have growth rates like that. And in some cases, in fact, in their case specifically, it's so difficult to get for them to hire more CPAs just for starters then to hire CPAs and they've all got to get trained really in ESOP, and then to hire those with specialties in ESOP or experience at all in the ESOP, really difficult. So the question here is, well, can they possibly keep up and hire at this rate to be able to manage the growth that they've got? So there's another reason to get more margin because you're going to have to hire high dollar people and they're going to have to spend 3, 4, 5 years to be prepared to be a lead CPA on a pro on a
Or
project.
instead of trying to optimize your revenue, you optimize your client base based on who fits what you do the best.
Yes, exactly.
And so customers that are high have high amount of attention required, maybe you don't take those on. You become very selective on who you do business with,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
automatically increases your margins and then allows you to grow your staff at a reasonable level. Because
Yes.
if you grow too fast, you don't have the quality that you have
Hmm.
if you just take your time and develop your people accordingly.
Exactly. And if you have too many people sitting around with no real work to do, what do you tend to do? You don't want to lose them. So you start taking audit business or something else to keep them busy. And now you're
Yeah,
no longer specialized.
exactly.
You spread out, you become a general CPA, and now you're competing even in your region with the top five and 30 or 40 other qualified CPAs that are at a level like that. So you literally destroy your market by overgrowing your staff.
Well, here's another option. There's another local CPA firm that's run by basically one person who's hired like four other accountants.
Mm,
And this person wants to help everybody.
mm.
And this person is spending 20 hours a day sometimes trying to keep up, taking care of the clients, and can't make the distinction between which clients they want and which ones should probably be helped by somebody else.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that gets into a quality of life issue. And if you're outside trying to look at buying one of those CPA firms, who wants to buy a company that you have to work 20 hours or
yeah,
16 hours a
yeah.
day? It just is.
Well, yeah. Well, and you're right. It's like where's the value created for, say, the next owner, the next partner? And whenever and CPAs more than anybody else should know this, whenever you're not taking a look at margins and dollars and profits, and you're making decisions based on, well, I want to help everybody. Now you throw emotions into it, and it's not a good place to be. You make the wrong decisions. Now, that's not to say that there's not a side from a marketing perspective on, say, an emotional solution. That's been very well used in, well, environmental issues, for instance. Folks are building huge, huge nonprofits on an emotional issue. So it can be done, but they're using it from a marketing perspective. If they're making operational decisions based on, well, we just want to help everybody, then you end up with, inevitably, you're going to end up with problems. And in fact, John Mills commented the other day that nonprofits have a real tendency to do this. They don't look at the bottom line because they think there isn't one, and they make bad decisions. Comments on that comment, John?
Um, I was just thinking of, does this principle that we're talking about apply to most segments of business? And I was kind of going through esoteric uh, ideas, and one of them was in the guitar world. I've got a friend of mine. I play a little bit of guitar. Um, I'm not really. I haven't really been a purist. I haven't got into. I've got an old Martin. I've got a 008 Martin that's very old. I've had 30 years, and it was 20 years when I got it. It's probably now worth a lot of money, but it's just a nice guitar, and it remains incredibly in tune despite the decades that I've had it. And I change strings. So one of my friends is a left-handed uh, guitar player, and he's also fairly picky about having the action very precise and the sound very precise, far more nuanced than I am. But he's found a couple of companies, one in Ireland, and a couple here that are very specialty in their product.
Mhm.
And they have stayed in their niche. They don't stretch out, but they have become very well known for handmade, hand finished, uh, a variety of pure woods that they use. And that collector's items, just from a financial investment point of view, to start with, but they are sought after musicians just because of their acoustic qualities. And I think it's an example of somebody who's, they haven't the world, their world is very small, but it's become more profitable. And you could spend, four or $5,000 for an average guitar, but it's
Mhm.
a Collins or it's whatever make it happens to be,
Yeah.
and it comes with a great deal of pride and a list of people who made it, how it was produced, and you end up talking to the people who are to figure out what kind of music do you play and how do you want it set up, and you know it's a very customizable product with a high margin in it.
And it also becomes sort of a work of art because the craftsmanship is at that sort of
It is a work of art.
very, very, very high end level, and handcrafted, which is so difficult to find nowadays, right?
Well, and I'm looking back, and some of the models they currently produce are virtually identical to the ones they produced 25 years ago.
Yeah.
The finishes are slightly different,
Mm-hmm.
and their mechanicals may be a little different. Their actual turning pegs and the way they offset the strings may be a little different, and they might have changed some of the inlays. But in terms of the fundamental shape and the body and the acoustics, they remain finite.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the high, very, very, very high quality. And as long as there's a market for it, then there's going to be, it's going to be a successful company. The issue there, and we talked about markets, and this is a perfect example of you've got a specialty that is very, very narrow. Now the question is, do you have a market big enough to be able to, say, support yourself or you and your small group of
Well,
craftsmen?
so in this case, we've got a Southern California retired individual who sought them out in Ireland and
Yes,
transacted an international sale for this as a
right.
specialty item. It took a year to come to the design and the color, and because there were a
Yeah,
couple of variables you could change on it,
yeah.
color of the finish being one of them.
Yeah. So in today's world, you've got a world market. You don't have that many people who will spend, say, over $5,000 for a guitar or 10,000 or 15 or, you don't have, but there are enough probably to keep a few of these artisans going. And if they can really develop a huge, huge expertise in quality, tonality, and of course the artistic side of things too as well. That's a great example. Appreciate it.
Now, the other thing that I've got to come up with is there is in the guitar world, and this is kind of, you'll think I've set this up, and I apologize. There's a Redlands, California company who started off with travel guitars, and they simply wanted to make small guitars that sounded good for the travel community. And it's guess what it's called? It's called Traveler Guitar.
Hmm.
And I've actually bought a guitar from them. And their specialty is full length necks. So you have a set, full hand movement on your neck with much smaller bodies
Hmm.
and that can fit either in a backpack or some traveling luggage and is very minimal in terms of its weight, but w- fundamentally wooden. Now, these guys make acoustics and they also make, um, you know, other guitars that are, a solid wood or solid. They make some of them that are collapsible
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
And it started off with one guy making them, and now they've got a team, they've got a building, and full scale neck, 28 inches long, acoustic. So it's really
Wow.
quite interesting what they do. Traveler Guitar, they've gone the other way. Now they do have a relationship with a manufacturing arm in China that will produce some of the guitars very affordably that are not the handmade guitars. So there's a
Mhm.
mixture.
Wow. That's great.
Corey
Good
Oliver's a great
examples.
guy, and his big client is Guitar Center, isn't it? Or it's that big, sort of the big box music store.
They
Yeah.
I
do
think it's
they do
Guitar
Yeah.
Center.
sell to some of but if you
Yeah.
actually go to his location, you can go in there and you can try out all kinds of variations and get whatever you want. It's phenomenal.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
And they are really, purists about what they do and how they do it. They make a good product.
Wow, great. Now, JP Beal has done some interesting things too that fit kind of in this category. So we're really happy to have you here. And he's one of the micro giants that have helped us with our programs on that side of things too. And tell us a little bit. You started off with a business primarily focused on using local products, agricultural products, to really help keep them in business as part of it. And plus, you kind of got a background in it. Tell us about your recent specializations that has kind of come your way.
Yeah. I'm struck by the topic today because I think there's a lot of different ways to sort of slice and dice the principle. Because and I have this comment or this conversation with salespeople and with customers I have. They look at my catalog and like, okay, JP, what are you doing here? You're selling lip balm and soap and perfume and marmalade. Like all these things seem different. Why are you doing all of this?
Hmm.
And sitting here in the talk, I was thinking about how I might be able to sort of phrase what I would say my core competency is. And I think I had a goal, and then it happens that I think I had some capabilities that I've learned along the way in small business. And I think um, there are several cases where if you're in business, you don't necessarily realize quite what your competency is when you start, and that sort of develops over time. Or,
Well,
maybe a
it does.
customer
It does.
tells you, hey, you're doing this and it's really cool. I mean, like you look at William Wrigley with the chewing gum. He was a soap merchant when he started out, and the chewing gum was a throw-in
Right.
included with purchase, and it turned out people liked the chewing gum better. And here we all are.
Better than the soap,
Um,
right?
yeah, right.
Good story.
People like to chew gum more than they like to chew soap. Who knew? But
Yeah.
for the connective tissue between all the products that I've made has a lot to do with essential oil. Um, the and it has everything to do with everything that grows here locally. So, I mean, I started out with sort of the business case of how do you market Redlands produce to the world?
Mhm.
Redlands
Yeah.
produce that used to be marketed globally and became
Mhm.
disconnected over time for various
And
economic history reasons we don't need to get into. And how do
the
we think
product,
about
the
this market?
product was, I'll just throw in, the product was citrus back in the day. It was one of the world's big quality citrus producers. And that's now all
Absolutely.
over. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, those of us who live here locally know 100% the value prop is still there. Our oranges taste better on the worst of days than anything you
Hmm.
buy at the grocery store.
Yep.
And how is it that we can bring that to the market? That the value prop that was developed 100 years ago is now obsolete. That marketing strategy. So let's find a new one. And so the commonality in all of this has a lot to do with flavor and fragrance, has a lot to do with blending. And so as I was sitting here listening to you talk, thinking about, how is it I could say this in a sentence? Um, it comes down to sort of blending flavors and fragrances. And there's a lot of different ways that I can do that. And I think
Mm, mm,
even we were talking before all this began about wine. That is also a discipline that engages that skill set where you're focusing on the aromatics and the flavor, and you're working with an agricultural product in order to produce a luxury item that people enjoy consuming. And um, so I think that's probably how I would express it in a phrase. And we try to do that with unique products. Now, we have an unfair advantage over the rest of the world. Like you said, a competitive advantage has to be repeatable. And we happen to have a home court advantage in that, statistically speaking, if you look at outcomes on, say, for example, citrus, I now work with near 20 different agricultural products that grow
wow.
here in Southern California,
Yeah. Wow.
citrus and not.
Mhm.
For example, we have a great partnership with the lavender farm up in San Luis Obispo County, and we work with their essential oils that they actually distill on site. I don't distill myself.
Yeah.
That's not my core competency yet.
Right.
So I mean, I'm reminded of, when you're thinking about your specialization, I'm reminded of something a professor told me in business school. Focus on what it is you do well and outsource what it is you don't.
Hmm.
And you find that sort of quality of life that Ed was talking about a little bit. You can't be everything to everyone,
Hmm.
so focus your time on what you can do best.
Right.
And which, I mean, easy enough to say, but when you're in business for yourself and just starting out, it's you do kind of have to be a jack of all trades. Um, but um, we have that home court advantage because of the microclimate we're in, the soil, the weather, everything about this area produces consistently incredible outcomes over and above what is statistically normal for
Mhm.
citrus fruit around the world. How do I
Mhm.
know that? Well, I test it.
Uh-huh.
And, in order to be able to guarantee that, you have to be able to, just the way winemakers do with their grapes, it's nothing new. You have to be able to have direct control over how these things are raised or significant influence over it. And so understanding the methods by which the citrus is cultivated, the conditions under which they're picked, and then being able to select for certain things in order to use them as ingredients, and really know your partners and the things that you do outsource, so that that quality level, if that's what you're solving for, and I think all of us in business are, to be able to find a reliably high quality ingredient. And so we have focused on developing products around those things that really showcase, we think, what's special about Southern California and Redlands agriculture.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting thought exercise. We've brought back some vintage reproductions. I mean, we're not the first people to make marmalade in Redlands,
Mhm.
and we're not the only people making marmalade in Redlands right now.
But right
And I
now,
would say that,
but apparently you are the best. Tell us
well,
about, be sure and tell us about your marmalade.
so our latest and now main product is our line of marmalades, which we released last year. With four initial flavors. We're now up to seven. We may be adding a couple more. We like to use single source and single variety recipes for our marmalades. So we have a navel orange, a Valencia orange, a Eureka lemon. That's an heirloom variety of lemon that came with Italian immigrants to California during the gold rush, and Mignolo Tangelo, which is actually something my family has grown here in town since the variety was developed in the 1930s. And so that's a giant tangerine. I have to explain that to people a lot.
Oh yeah,
But
okay. I
it's
don't
a
even
it's a
know.
tangerine grapefruit cross, and so it
Oh,
has sort of a bell shape to it. It has sort of like a little small node on the top. Easy peel. There are some seeds, but you get that tangerine sweetness and a little bit of tannin from the grapefruit. That's lovely. And so the unique thing that we've achieved with these marmalades is that each of our seven flavors have unique flavor notes as a consequence of the way we work with our produce, and screen for what we want to use in the marmalade actually. Um, so there's a bit of art and science to it, to the blending of it all. But so for example, our navel orange, which is almost, the last season was 2 times sweeter than what you could buy in the grocery store.
wow.
And that developed a natural honey and tropical fruit note in it. So I mean, like, it's kind of like walking into a wine tasting room and saying, this wine tastes like grapes. That's the surest way to get tossed out of the room. That
Right.
each one of these are have unique and somewhat unusual flavor profiles. So, for example, the Mignolo Tangelo will start bright and it will end dark. It sort of sinks down deep, and you get
So you're
avocado honey.
talking about marmalade as if it was a wine product with
Well,
notes. And
but
so you've expanded, because I don't think any of us here and a lot of people I know would have ever thought there was anything more to marmalade than marmalade. And now you're talking about seven kinds of marmalade. That's an amazing specialty, it seems like to me.
Well, we're lucky because I mean, our competition in Scotland, the traditional marmalade is made with Seville oranges, and those have to be imported to the UK from Spain, so they're picked
Yes.
young. And so when people taste British marmalade, it's bitter, and people love it. People do love original British marmalade.
Yeah.
Um, it is an acquired taste for some, though.
Mhm.
And it's the underripeness that gives it that bitterness to a certain degree. I mean, a Seville orange is a bitter orange. And we grow them here too. But we have so many different varieties and types that grow here in Southern California. And I think a lot of people don't give credit for that. There are, near thousands that were just developed at UCR alone. And what's really kind of interesting, so I'll use as an example, we produce 2 oranges, 2 lemons, and 2 grapefruits, and a tangerine in our line. And the Duncan grapefruit is a white grapefruit. It's the original heirloom variety that first came to the country from the Caribbean in the 1830s. This is the type that Sarah Morey would have been growing. And because, believe it, she has a huge history there, but it turns out her primary crop was grapefruit. And it's highly sought after by collectors, but seedless came in and you lost a lot of this diversity. But we do have some of these heirloom trees still tucked around here. And so you get this smooth grapefruit start with a pop of maraschino cherry on the finish. It's really surprising. You get a non-citrus flavor. And the mellow gold, which looks like a white grapefruit, but has a little bit of pink blush. This variety was designed to be peeled and eaten like an orange in the 1950s, and then seedless came in. Has this beautiful amber color. Because of just this faint hint of pink blush, you really wouldn't have expected it. And then it starts with a blackberry note and then finishes with a really smooth grapefruit note. Wow. So, but yeah, you have picked up a little bit on that in the marketing. The flavor note, the way we talk about the marmalade, the experience, is the way people talk about chocolate, coffee, wine, other gourmet products. Yeah. But it's not just in the marketing, because the underlying product has to be able to hold that up. And the grapefruits are a really fun example because the flavors come through clear as day. And it's really unusual. And, funny enough, like, people have strong opinions on grapefruit one way or the other. You either love it or you hate it. Yeah. It's always fun to do tasting events with those, though. I start people off with grapefruit usually, because those two make converts out of people who are grapefruit skeptics. But so that's we fabulous. We won 8 medals at the World Marmalade Awards against 3,400 jars in a blind tasting from 33 countries, from every other country in the world you could possibly think of as being one of the world's most prominent, citrus producing countries on earth. Italy, France, Spain, places in North Africa, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, Japan, you name it, Brazil. Parts of Polynesia, and we know we grow incredible things here, and we thought it was high time the rest of the world remembered that too. So
absolutely incredible that. And what made you decide to enter this contest? I mean, it was your second year.
Well, we saw the competition. We thought it was intriguing. And we had tasted the product. We've had confidence in it. Of course, the shipping was nerve-wracking because it's glass and it's going air freight and everything. But we had researched this competition, and it was kind of like a why not? Let's just sort of see where you go and where it goes. And it happened in February. The email came through, and it was just an amazing sensation to see that thing come in and say, have it in the subject line, congratulations.
That is amazing. Now, do you, being immodest here, is it because of the recipe, or does it really have to do with this Redlands soil that we have?
Well, it has to do with both of those things. It has to do with both of those things, and the methods too. There's a third. Each has to carry its part, and so we're proud to work with a company that has a long legacy in manufacturing marmalade here in California. And they use their original recipe machinery. They still produce on the same site. It's the same family that does it. They're on generation 4. It's a fantastic story. And they produce for incredible customers that you would recognize if I told you. And they get approached by people all the time. And they have the pick of the best in California to work with, and they do. They have a high standard, and we had been working with him for years to form a relationship, but he knew
So
of our area.
you're talking about yet another company that fits this model we're talking about today. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
But so, I mean, like, we knew we wanted to make marmalade, but we also wanted to offer it at a certain level that it could get onto a grocery store shelf, that it could get national or international distribution. And, you know, if I was making the marmalade, it would be the ring jar lid. I mean, we do home canning, and
Mhm.
you know, it would be a certain result. It would be good. You know,
Mhm.
we're decent canners, but
Yeah.
we wanted to offer the best experience because we were working with incredible stuff. So, but part of it's microclimate. You know, we're starting from a few spaces ahead
Yeah.
of most people, but it doesn't just happen as an accident to the weather, too. You know, when you're raising grapes in Napa, it's a fantastic microclimate, but you have incredible people who know how to get the very, very best out of the very best microclimate. And so there's a lot of the technique of the growing of the citrus that's important as well. And that's something that we certainly focus on. And, you know, if we're not directly responsible, the term in wine is estate grown, as if it's your particular fruit. We try to work with people that some of whom we've known for a very long time. My family has, that we know do well with
Mhm.
their fruit. Um, I'm sorry, I'm actually getting a phone call from Molly. But I'll call her back in a couple minutes. But yeah,
Tell
so
her
it's
you'll call
really
her
all of
back.
those three for sure. It's sort of three legs of a stool there, I'd say.
Yeah. Wow, that's terrific. Well, congratulations. I think that is, well, I mean, it's beyond amazing. I think had you placed anywhere and on one of the products, it would be amazing. But to have received, what did you say, 8 medals, 7, 8 medals, that's
Yes.
just, that's outrageous. And so hopefully that's going to bring you huge amounts of new business and really launch you. I don't know that I see you on grocery stores everywhere. Kind of prefer maybe finding some good specialty high-end places. Um,
Certainly.
yeah, to kind of keep it special. There's a lot more volume, of course, down the road, but you got the same problem as you could be overwhelmed if you don't grow at a pace that makes sense. So, starting with very carefully with the right people, and it's hard. It's a hard kind of a long-term place to go, and working grocery stores is really miserable. So, and you, of course, you know that already. But the big ones
Well,
I'm
we're
talking about. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I've seen certain platforms where even to get the meeting is pay to play. It's
Yes.
been sort of an interesting learning experience there.
Yeah,
But
you got to buy shelf space many times and restock it yourself, and they really put you through the paces in those big stores. They
yeah.
really do. Yeah, amazing. Wow. Well, that is an incredible story, and it probably couldn't fit our subject better today. And gosh, I hope this really launches you and you know gets you rolling. You are going to be world famous in the citrus business. Um, at least in the marmalade business, you'll be world famous now. And you're taking off. You're going to accept this award when next week?
We're flying at the end of the week, and the award ceremony is Friday next. So yeah,
Okay.
just a little over a week from now.
Wow. And where is
So we'll send you
the
some pictures.
okay.
So it's the awards have been held for the last 25 years at a place called Dalemain House. in a place called Penrith on Hadrian's Wall in the Lake
Oh,
District. It's right there close to the border of England and Scotland, which
right.
for those of you watching at home, marmalade, citrus product, but it was invented in Scotland.
Yes.
And so this house has a long history associated with marmalade. I guess the people who built it had a collection of recipes going all the way back to the 1600s.
Wow.
Yes. Um, so, but for the last
I've
25 years, it's been the world's first and world's largest marmalade
Very,
competition.
very interesting. I've hiked the Hadrian's Wall. I was not aware of this place. I'm going to have to look it up and see exactly where it is because we've run into several very interesting things along the wall. Molly and I both have ancestors, one on one end and one on the other end, that were prominent in the 1600s. And so I'm going to be very interested to find out about it. And that's an area that is very remote, and to see or hear that they're going to have this worldwide competition, that's cool. That's very cool. So I'll look at it. And it's called Penn House. Was that Penn?
The house is called Dalemain,
Oh,
and the little
Delmain.
village it's closest to is called Penrith,
Oh,
which
Penrith.
is
Penrith.
close-ish to Carlisle.
Okay, gotcha on that end. Great, great. That
Yes.
sounds really fun. Well, thank you all. I think we're out of time, and what a great program this has been with really some great examples of this concept that we've discussed today, and particularly JP. Thanks for joining us and sharing this incredible story, and we hope to hear more from you on it as you progress. Thank you so much, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic.
That was a phenomenal